Just before dawn on January 15th, 1978, the air in Tallahassee felt wrong, heavy, damp, too quiet for a college town. The Chi Omega sorority house sat still beneath a crooked moon, its white columns washed in a pale glow. Inside, students slept behind locked doors, wrapped in blankets, unaware that something nameless had slipped in among them. At 3 a.m., a thud echoed through the corridor, then another. The sound of a door brushing against a frame, a soft, strangled gasp. Hours later, police officers stepped into a nightmare they would never forget. Blood pooled across hardwood floors, lamps were torn from their cords, furniture overturned in a silent, frenzied battle. 2 young women, beaten and strangled, lay where they had once slept peacefully. 2 others clung to life by inches. Nothing was stolen, nothing explained. No footprints, no forced entry, just violence, cold and clean. The mark of someone who had done this before. The man who walked out of that house vanished into the night like a ghost. But this was no ghost. This was a predator whose story stretched across states, years, and dozens of innocent lives. The Chi Omega murders weren't the beginning. They were the final, desperate explosion of a man unraveling. His name was Ted Bundy. Long before Florida, long before the word Bundy pierced the national conscience, the Pacific Northwest had already been living under his shadow. Seattle in the early 1970s was a city of soft rain and long afternoons, where students clustered in coffee houses and the scent of pine drifted through open windows. On the surface, it was peaceful, intellectual, alive. But beneath that calm was a string of disappearances that struck the community like a pulse of fear. Young women, intelligent, ambitious, often with long brown hair, began vanishing. One from her basement bedroom, another from a university parking lot, another from a crowded park in broad daylight. None of the cases made sense. None of them had witnesses. None of them had patterns investigators could reliably follow. Yet the city felt a presence moving quietly among them, studying them, selecting them, hunting them. Seattle looked beautiful, but darkness lived in the spaces between its trees. And Ted Bundy learned how to move through that darkness without leaving a trace. Theodore Robert Bundy entered the world on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His birth was shrouded in secrecy. His biological father was never confirmed. His mother, Louise, unmarried and frightened, gave birth in a home for unwed mothers, a fact hidden from Ted for years. For the first part of his life, Ted believed his mother was his sister, and his grandparents were his parents. Perfection on the outside, confusion on the inside. His grandfather was violent and controlling. His grandmother was depressed. Ted, a quiet boy with a sharp mind, learned early that secrets were a form of survival. He wore politeness like armor. He smiled when expected. He obeyed when watched. But inside, the cracks widened. Childhood peers described him as shy, withdrawn. Some recalled him watching people with an intensity that didn't feel right. He stole. He spied through windows. He drifted into fantasies of power and domination. Nothing explosive, just enough darkness to signal what was coming. By adolescence, the fantasies grew darker, shaped by rejection, humiliation, and a deep longing for control. He built a world inside his mind where he held all the power, a world he would later force others into. Bundy's early 20s were a study in contradiction. He volunteered for political campaigns, earned the trust of professors, began law school, dated a woman he admired deeply. To friends, he was charming, ambitious, promising, but inside he was cracking. When his girlfriend ended the relationship, the collapse of that illusion, the perfect life he pretended to have, destroyed what little stability he still clung to. It was after that breakup that his fantasies turned into actions. By 1974, young women began disappearing around Seattle. The first confirmed victim, 21-year-old Linda Ann Healy, was taken from her bedroom while her roommate slept just steps away. Her bed was made after the abduction, her belongings arranged neatly. The only trace was blood on the pillow. Then it escalated. A student missing from the university parking lot, another taken while walking home at dusk, another abducted from a crowded park on a warm July afternoon. Ted grew bolder, more meticulous, more confident. Every disappearance fed something inside him, something that had been waiting for years. He didn't kill out of passion, he killed out of control. Bundy crafted his method with precision. He selected women who fit a particular profile: young, attractive, long hair parted down the middle. A type that reminded him of the woman who rejected him. He approached them while wearing a cast, an arm sling, or walking with a limp. He carried a stack of books or asked for help loading a sailboat into the back of his car. He was polite, soft-spoken, gentle. There was nothing threatening about him. That was the trap. Once inside his tan Volkswagen Beetle, the doors were modified to prevent escape. He knocked victims unconscious with a crowbar hidden under the seat. Then he drove them deep into forests or mountains where he could take his time. His rituals were disturbing. He revisited the bodies. He repositioned them. He spoke to them. He treated them as objects in a nightmare he curated himself. For Bundy, killing was never about ending life. It was about ownership, dominance, immobilizing someone completely and holding the illusion of power he craved. The list of victims is long, and each one carried a life full of dreams stolen too soon. There was Janice Ott, abducted from Lake Sammamish State Park on a warm July afternoon. She had been riding her bike, smiling, enjoying the sunlight on her face. Denise Nasland disappeared the same day, taken within hours of Janice. 2 women, 1 park, 1 predator. In Utah, he took 17-year-old Nancy Wilcox, then Melissa Smith, then Laura Amy. Their disappearances left families in states of silent horror, clinging to hope that faded with each passing week. In Colorado, 23-year-old Karen Campbell vanished from a hotel corridor. Hundreds searched for her. Snow fell over the mountains. Her body wasn't found for weeks. Each case grew more violent, more desperate. Ted had become addicted to the hunt, and the intervals between kills grew shorter. By 1975, his spree spanned Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. Entire regions lived in fear. Women changed their routines overnight. Parents drove their daughters to class. Dormitories installed extra locks. The fear was real, and it was justified. Multiple states, multiple victims, multiple jurisdictions. It was chaos. Detectives in Washington were overwhelmed with disappearances that refused to make sense. Utah investigators suspected a pattern but lacked evidence. Colorado police found bodies but no suspects. The name Ted surfaced again and again. A man with a tan VW bug, a man with his arm in a sling, a man who introduced himself politely before vanishing into thin air. Hundreds of tips came in. Bundy's own girlfriend, Liz Klopfer, called police with suspicions. So did college classmates. So did co-workers. But Ted didn't fit the monster they imagined. He was clean-cut, educated, polite, a law student with political connections. Investigators were hunting a ghost whose face looked nothing like evil. Every misstep bought him time, and he used that time well. In August 1975, a Utah Highway Patrol officer noticed a tan Volkswagen creeping through a dark suburb. The driver looked nervous. The officer pulled him over. Inside the vehicle were masks, handcuffs, a crowbar, rope, garbage bags, and an ice pick. The driver smiled politely. His name was Ted Bundy. It should have ended there, but Bundy talked his way out with calm, careful charm. Still, the officer filed a report. When investigators pieced it together with earlier cases, suspicions sharpened. Bundy was arrested weeks later for kidnapping and assault after a woman described her escape from a man who matched his exact appearance. While awaiting trial in Colorado for murder charges, Bundy escaped once, then a second time, this time through the ceiling of the jail, slipping out into the freezing night like a shadow with unfinished business. The manhunt spread across the country, but Bundy was already far away. He was heading to Florida. January 1978, Tallahassee. Bundy lived under a stolen identity, blending into the Florida State University campus like a drifter passing through. But his control was unraveling. He was starving, exhausted, and hunted. And when the hunger resurfaced, he struck with a violence unlike anything investigators had seen. The Chi Omega attack was frenzied, brutal, a desperate lashing out from a man who knew his time was running out. Minutes after leaving the sorority house, he assaulted another student in a nearby apartment, an attack she barely survived. 2 weeks later, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her school in Lake City. Her disappearance shattered the community. Her body was found weeks later in a wooded area, one more life destroyed by Bundy's final descent. On February 15, 1978, a Pensacola police officer spotted a stolen vehicle swerving through the streets. Inside sat Bundy, thin, tired, and cornered. He fought, then surrendered, and whispered, "I'm Ted." This time, there was no escape. The search of his room revealed fibers matching multiple victims, stolen IDs, and forensic evidence tying him directly to the Florida murders. The facade was gone. What remained was the truth beneath the smile. Bundy's Florida trial was the first nationally televised murder trial in American history. He treated it like a stage. He represented himself, cross-examined police officers, argued with judges, smiled at cameras, proposed to a woman in the courtroom. He reveled in the attention. But beneath the performance was damning evidence. Bite marks, hair samples, eyewitness accounts, forensic analysis. Every detail closed another door. In 1979, Bundy was convicted of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death. In 1980, he was convicted again for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Psychiatrists called him a textbook sociopath, manipulative, narcissistic, incapable of empathy. Bundy denied it all. Even on death row, he stalled for years, offering partial confessions to investigators in exchange for time. He tried to rewrite his own story, to control the narrative one last time. But justice moves patiently. On January 24, 1989, just after sunrise, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside, crowds gathered, carrying signs, cheering as smoke rose from the prison roof. For families of victims, the moment brought closure. For others, only questions. How could a man so charming be so monstrous? How many victims were never found? How many lives were altered by the presence of a man who walked among them, unnoticed? Bundy's story has become a cautionary tale of deception, charisma, and the insidious nature of evil disguised as ordinary. What makes Ted Bundy terrifying isn't the brutality of his crimes alone. It's the mask he wore so well, the ability to look normal, to sound trustworthy, to appear harmless. He showed the world that evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it shakes your hand. Sometimes it holds the door open. And sometimes it waits patiently behind eyes that look human, right until the moment they don't. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.